Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you today about relics. One specific relic in particular we're going to be going over here. So let's go ahead and take a look into the relic index here. The one that we're going to be talking about is, of course, the Aspect of Siroth, which I always struggle to find, apparently. So give me 1 second while I do that. It's going to be here in the standard group. So Aspect of Siroth, when the wearer receives fatal damage, reduces it by 50% of their turn meter, and then fully reduces their turn meter. Cooldown 1 turn. So this is going to go up to a full 100% reduction based off their turn meter, right? So simply put, you have 100% turn meter, you have a full turn meter, you're reducing the incoming damage by 100% and then fully depleting your turn meter. And I want to talk to you guys specifically about champions that you should be using this on, because I just pulled one myself. I don't have Rotos, so he is going to be mentioned, but there's going to be a plethora of other champions that are mentioned on this list as well. So if you're like me and you don't have Rotos, I guarantee you that you're going to have at least one champion on this list eventually, as long as you play the game, because it is free to play, accessible for everybody. So let's go ahead and let's hop straight into it here. And I have at least 5 different champions or champion combinations that we can talk about. So the first one that we are going to talk about here is going to be Rotos. Rotos is absolutely busted with this particular relic. The reason being is passive is where he's decreasing damage from enemy hits so he can't get one shot anyways. And then if he is taking damage equal to 50% of his max HP or more, he's going to get an extra turn. So that's really what makes the Aspect of Siroth so powerful, is when you can reduce that damage straight into an extra turn. And that's why Rotos is absolutely busted in it. By far, and it's not even close, the margins, to be honest. If you have a Rotos, you're running him in Aspect of Siroth, right? It's not even a question. So that being said, like I say, everybody's seen that one coming. It's now out of the way. We can talk about some other options here. Real quick, though, if you enjoy the Watcher Realms content and you want to see more of it, definitely go ahead and make sure to hit that subscribe button. And also make sure to leave a like on the video, as well as hitting the bell notification so that YouTube lets you know when I post a video. Apparently, a lot of people on YouTube don't get notified when, people they subscribe to post. So, that's going to be a very good way to help resolve that. And for the next champion that we're going to talk about, it is actually still inside the Undead Hordes, and it is going to be Ultimate Death Knight. Ultimate Death Knight, in my opinion, is another fantastic candidate to run Aspect of Siroth on. And to showcase that to you and show that I'm not just making stuff up, I will find my UDK and show you that I'm using my +9 Aspect of Siroth on UDK. Why is it so strong? Well, first of all, it's going to give him additional defense, which is a plus, and it's going to give him additional resistance, which is also a plus, because especially when you're using UDK in a PvP setting, and I should specify that these discussions specifically with Aspect of Siroth are targeted towards PvP, because realistically you're not going to be depending on this relic in PvE, right? It's going to be just a stat stick for you in PvE. So this is a PvP discussion. You're going to have, something like Stone Skin on your UDK. So the extra resistance is going to help to make sure that that doesn't get ripped off. You can also put some very, very good options on it in terms of glyphs, right? So basically extra resistance against somebody trying to play CC on him. He's destroying the attacker's max HP. Stacks up to 30%, which is pretty crazy. And obviously he is a absolute tank when it comes to eating hits, so he's going to be destroying a lot of max HP, and then he's also going to get his defense increased every time he receives a critical hit. So very, very good options there in terms of, again, the glyphs you can put on there. What else makes him so strong with it? Well, if we go into the Codex here and we take a look at this nifty little fella, Georgid the Breaker, who is one of the strongest damage dealing units inside the current meta. He is picked a lot of times specifically to counter a UDK. Why is that? Well, he can come in here with his A3, which attacks one enemy, ignores Strengthen, Stone Skin, Unkillable, block damage, increased defense, ally protection, and shield. And it also grants an extra turn if he kills somebody, right? Then he'll come into his AoE that just smacks and places an Unkillable on him as well. So he is a very, very deadly champion to face inside Live Arena especially, but also Classic Arena. Quite often, this guy would get picked against me. He would just come in, slam down my UDK, get that extra turn, and then cycle into an AoE smack, right? But if you can use your Aspect of Siroth on UDK and make sure that he doesn't get one shot, right? Because he's going to start with at least like 50% turn meter, right? Or, you know, 30% turn meter, depending on where you are. And I already have this leveled up to a 70% damage reduction. So he's going to be reducing a significant amount of damage based on his turn meter. Plus, once you factor in things like reaction accessories, if you have those on him, it can help him become an absolute tanky powerhouse. And as a matter of fact, there have been at least 2 live arena fights that I've been able to win because they picked Georgid against my UDK. They slammed into my UDK, they couldn't one-shot him, and then I basically just got to cut in, take my turns, and wipe the enemy team, which was such a cool feeling to come up with some tactical brilliancy like that with the relic, right? So UDK is a fantastic option. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at another option here, and this is not necessarily going to be the champion that you put it on, but this is going to be anybody paired with her is who you want to put the Aspect of Siroth on, and that is going to be Freya. So Freya is a fantastic unit, right? And she has this Divine Foresight passive where she has a preventing the death of somebody with the highest crit damage, keeps them alive with 1 HP, heals them, and gives them an instant turn, right? Which is important because let's say you have Freya, and then let's say you have like a Sun Wukong or something like that, right? Let's say Sun Wukong gets hit with an AoE, specifically like a 2x hitter or a single hit, right? You'd want, so basically what I was thinking for this particular composition is, let's say you're going against like an Embry, right? He's a significant threat to any sort of UDK teams, or sorry, not UDK, to any sort of Sun Wukong teams. So let's say you're going against Embry, and then let's say 3 of your 4 champions happen to be a UDK, a Sun Wukong, and a Freya, right? Just hypothetically. And then let's say you have a 4th champion that's like maybe a Sifi or an Ancora, but they're dead, so you have this stack of, oh my god, I forgot the stuff that Embry puts up, Necrosis. Let's say you have the stacks of Necrosis, right? Huge hypothetical here. Hopefully you're with me so far. So you have 3 champions. They have stacks of Necrosis on them. And let's say that, obviously, Embry is in his alternate form. Now, let's imagine that Embry gets a turn, and he targets your Sun Wukong. Well, what's going to happen? First hit is going to go into your UDK. Second hit is going to be eaten by the Freya, right? Or by Sun Wukong, but then kept alive by Freya. And he's going to get that extra turn. Let's say you don't have the UDK. First hit comes in and slams into your Sun Wukong. And let's say he has high turn meter. That's going to reduce the damage he takes, which could potentially keep him alive. The second hit comes in, slams as well, and gets eaten by the Freya, right? So in this equation, let's take out the UDK, because in the first equation with the UDK, he eats the first hit, then Freya prevents the death on the second hit. But let's say in the second scenario, we have our Aspect of Siroth on the Sun Wukong. Long-winded way to get there. Again, hopefully you guys are with me still. But let's say we have the Aspect of Siroth on Sun Wukong. It's going to allow him to eat that first hit, or vice versa, right? So first hit is going to be Freya's passive, or second hit is going to be Freya's passive, first hit's Aspect of Siroth, right? Depends on how much turn meter he has, essentially. So any sort of a champion paired with Freya is going to be a fantastic option for the Aspect of Siroth. So you could also use it with like a Harima to keep her alive. If you're pairing her with Freya, that's probably going to be the best combination, considering that Freya brings an AoE increased defense as well. But enough rambling about Freya. Let's go ahead and talk about another option here, which isn't going to be as accessible for people. That's going to be Maritzka the Unbreakable. Why would you want Aspect of Siroth on her? Well, there's a couple of reasons. So first of all, again, if you're going against a Georgid, quite often what the strategy is to come in, slam through the Stone Skin, take out your Maritzka, and then pop an AoE against whoever you might have left. But if you have the Aspect of Siroth on her, that's not going to be possible. Additionally, if she's the last champion alive, obviously you're going to be depending on her for her AoE revive. And let's say, hypothetically, you're going against like a Nice in his Form 1, right? And he tries to hit you with that absolute smack of a bow shot that's going to place the block revive on your Maritzka. She can Aspect of Siroth that, survive that, and now she has to be hit again to actually be killed, which means, again, that your Nice is going to have his big money shot on cooldown. So a significant change to how she's played and the dynamic that she's played with could be building her inside the Aspect of Siroth on top of everything else that she has in her kit. So she is a notable option that I wanted to call out. And then finally is going to be the option that everybody gets for free, which is Embry. Now, Embry in his second form specifically, has a ton of survivability. So with his passive, when he dies, he reflects damage. He also revives himself, right? Plus, he has the block revive on the A1. So what you could do realistically is build Embry inside an Aspect of Siroth, which is going to allow him to eat hits, right? Just absolutely get pummeled. Then that's going to bring his HP threshold down to a certain extent, right? So let's say you have 50% turn meter, you get hit for a big amount. That's going to bring the damage down by 50% if you have a maxed out Aspect of Siroth, which is going to give him a lot less current HP, which could be a good thing because then that means that if he gets hit by a damage dealer, they're going to have less HP to eat through, which means that there's going to be more surplus damage, which will result in a higher damage reflection to that particular damage dealer. Additionally, if he survives, that could be the difference between him getting a counterattack in or getting an additional attack on the A1 in to place that block revive on the enemy team's damage dealer. So that's something to consider as well. I think Embry would be very, very strong inside the Aspect of Siroth relic, and a lot of raid PvP right now is based upon, you know, for example, RNG, right? And you know, any sort of a different build that you can bring is going to be fantastic for that. And a perfect example is going to be the initial building of Maritzka inside Relentless by Cruisen, right? So pretty much everybody runs her in that build now, but initially not many players had her in a Stone Skin Relentless build, and then Cruisen did something differently. It shook up the whole meta, and now everybody's doing it, right? So doing something different on your champions can really throw a hatchet into somebody's plans, right? It can really be a thorn in their side, and having your UDK or your Maritzka or your Embry inside a Aspect of Siroth could be just the thing that you need to win the battle, right? And I already talked about how having UDK inside that has won me a couple of battles that I can think of, and I'm sure it's influenced even more battles that I haven't thought of, right? Because once UDK loses his Stone Skin, it's going to be a huge difference maker there too. But that being said, make sure to let me know down in the comments who your favorite champion is to run inside the Aspect of Siroth. I'd love to hear how you guys have some of them built, or what kind of absolute freaky combinations you've come up with for this relic, considering how interesting it is. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.